Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. So we're going to be talking about a pretty big shift in how relationships work these days. We're diving into cohabitation before marriage, living together before you tie the knot.
Mm.
Our main source today is this fictional podcast episode. It's called Cohabitation and Future Expectations: How Living Together Shapes Our Views on Relationships. And it's from a podcast called Modern Love.
It really got me thinking because more and more couples are living together before marriage these days. Like, it's practically the norm now. Over 70% of couples in the U.S. do it.
It's true. It's definitely become really common.
But what I find really interesting is how this whole living together thing might be changing what we expect from relationships. Not just in those specific relationships, but in all our future relationships too. Like, does it change our views on love and commitment in the long run?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that researchers are really starting to look into. What's interesting is that cohabitation isn't just a simple test drive anymore, like it might have been in the past. Right. It's not just about seeing if you can tolerate each other's morning breath or anything. It's way more than that.
Exactly. It's about so much more than just testing compatibility.
Like you're basically merging your lives together in a lot of ways.
Right.
You're sharing finances,
Yeah.
dividing up chores.
Maybe even adopting a pet together.
Yeah, all that stuff.
You're essentially experiencing many of the hallmarks of marriage, but without that legal framework.
So it's like this pre-marriage dynamic almost. But does that then make the actual marriage less important? Like, does it diminish the perceived value of marriage itself?
Well, that's a big question, and there are a lot of different opinions on it. Some studies have shown that couples who live together before marriage are actually more likely to delay getting married.
Really?
Yeah, and it's not because they're less committed to each other, it's because they already feel a sense of permanence and stability in their relationship.
So it's like they're getting a sneak peek at married life without having to actually go through the whole wedding thing.
Interesting.
But then does that sneak peek make them more or less likely to actually tie the knot eventually?
It's hard to say for sure. It really depends on the couple. For some couples, living together is like a confirmation that, hey, this works, let's make it official. But for others, it might actually make them more hesitant about marriage.
How so?
Well, I think for some people, that heightened awareness of the realities of long-term partnership, all the compromises, the day-to-day stuff, that might make them think twice about taking that next step.
It's like they've seen behind the curtain a little bit and realized that marriage isn't always a fairy tale.
Exactly.
The Modern Love episode we're talking about today, they actually brought up how this whole preview of marriage through cohabitation, it can create a lot of tension for couples if they're not both on the same page about their long-term goals.
Oh, absolutely. That's a really common issue. One partner might start feeling like they want that formal commitment, that they're ready for marriage, while the other partner is perfectly content with the way things are. And that difference in expectations can lead to a lot of conflict.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like you're sending a signal of seriousness by moving in together,
Right.
but you're not actually defining what the future holds.
Right.
So there's all this ambiguity.
Exactly. It's like this unspoken agreement that the relationship is headed somewhere serious. But where exactly? That's often left unclear. And that's where things can get messy.
So you're sharing a life, building a home together, but maybe avoiding those big conversations about where it's all going.
It happens a lot.
And those unaddressed expectations can really cause problems down the line, I bet.
Oh, for sure. It's like a ticking time bomb in some cases.
So is there a way to navigate cohabitation, like in a way that actually promotes clarity and communication instead of leading to all this ambiguity and tension?
Well, the couples who seem to do it well, they're really intentional about their communication. They make a point of having regular check-ins with each other about their needs, their expectations, and their long-term goals.
So it's like they're treating cohabitation as an opportunity to really learn about themselves and their partner,
Yeah,
rather than just a convenient living arrangement.
exactly. They're using it as a time to figure out what they truly want and need from a relationship.
And I imagine that self-awareness can be really empowering.
It is, regardless of whether they end up getting married or not.
So it sounds like cohabitation, when done thoughtfully, can actually be a really powerful catalyst for personal growth. It's not just about tolerating someone's dirty dishes. It's about really understanding your own needs and boundaries in a relationship.
I think that's a really important point. Cohabitation has the potential to reshape our views on relationships, not just because it gives us a glimpse into married life, but because it forces us to confront our own expectations and desires.
And that brings up another interesting point from the Modern Love episode. The idea that cohabitation might be changing what commitment means in the first place.
Oh, definitely. It's challenging those traditional notions of what it means to be committed to someone.
Like, is it about signing a marriage certificate? Or is it about building a life together, sharing responsibilities, providing emotional support, regardless of whether you're legally married or not?
Exactly. It's a really interesting question, and one that I think a lot of couples are grappling with these days.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I bet there are a lot of different answers depending on who you ask.
For sure. But what's fascinating is that this redefinition of commitment isn't necessarily a bad thing. For some people, it represents a more nuanced and maybe even more authentic way of relating to each other.
It's like we're moving away from this one-size-fits-all model of commitment and towards something that's more fluid and personalized.
Exactly. It's about figuring out what works for each individual couple, rather than just adhering to what society tells us we should do.
And I think that's where the real power of cohabitation lies, in its potential to help us create relationships that are truly tailored to our own needs and values.
Yeah.
But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. We've covered a lot of ground already, and I want to make sure we have time to really unpack the practical side of things. How does navigating the day-to-day realities of sharing a space with someone actually impact our expectations for future relationships? We'll dig into that after this quick break.
You know, it's funny. When you think about it, living together before marriage can actually make you more practical about relationships.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, when you're living with someone, you have to deal with all those little everyday things like splitting bills and making sure the chores get done. You know, all that nitty-gritty stuff.
Yeah, definitely. It's not all romantic candlelit dinners and fun weekend trips.
Exactly. You start to see what a long-term partnership really entails.
So it kind of bursts that romantic bubble a little bit.
In a way, yeah. You're seeing your partner for who they really are, warts and all, not just the polished version they might present on a date. And that can be a good thing and a bad thing.
I can see that.
Like, it might make you more cautious about jumping into another serious relationship too quickly because you've seen firsthand how much work and compromise is involved.
But I guess it could also make you more confident about handling the challenges of a relationship, since you've already been through it.
Exactly. You've tackled some of those hurdles that trip up a lot of couples, so you're going into future relationships with more experience and more realistic expectations.
So cohabitation is like this crash course in compatibility. It's not just about liking the same movies or whatever. It's about seeing how you handle the ups and downs of daily life together.
Right. It's about navigating those little moments of frustration and figuring out how to compromise.
Because those are the moments that really matter in the long run.
Absolutely. They can make or break a relationship.
You know that Modern Love episode we talked about?
Mm-hmm.
They had this really interesting way of describing cohabitation.
Oh,
They
yeah.
called it a relationship laboratory.
I like that.
It's like you get to experimental,
See what works and what doesn't.
learn from your mistakes.
Without the same level of commitment as marriage?
Exactly. And even if things don't work out,
Mm.
you still walk away with all these insights about yourself and what you're looking for in a partner.
That's so true. It's not about seeing those relationships as failures. It's about seeing them as opportunities for growth.
It's like each relationship adds another layer to your relationship resume. You're not just looking for the one, you're becoming a better partner along the way.
I love that analogy. It's about becoming more self-aware, more intentional in your choices.
And that self-awareness can be really powerful in future relationships.
Absolutely. You're not just hoping for the best anymore. You're going into those relationships with a clearer sense of your needs, your boundaries, your deal breakers.
It sounds like cohabitation can really change what we value in a partner. It's not just about finding someone who's charming or fun to be around. It's about finding someone who's reliable and responsible.
Right. Someone who can handle the challenges of everyday life.
Someone who you can actually see yourself building a life with.
Exactly.
So it's not just about checking off boxes on some ideal partner list. It's about finding someone who's compatible with you on a much deeper level.
I think that's a really important distinction.
And cohabitation can help you figure that out before making a bigger commitment, like marriage.
It's like a trial run for the real thing.
Which brings us back to the question of how all this impacts our views on marriage. We talked about how cohabitation can make some people more hesitant to get married. But can it also have the opposite effect?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like, can it make people more excited about marriage?
Absolutely. For some couples, living together is like this confirmation that they're ready to take that next step.
They've already figured out the whole living together thing.
They feel confident that they can handle the challenges of married life.
Like they passed the compatibility test.
Exactly.
But it's not just about feeling confident in the relationship. It's also about redefining what marriage means to them.
Right. Because for couples who've already been living together, Marriage might become less about the practical side of things and more about the emotional and symbolic significance.
So it's less about merging finances and more about celebrating their love and commitment in a public way.
Exactly. It's about making a conscious choice to build a life together.
And sharing that choice with their loved ones.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's like they're taking all the lessons they've learned from living together
Yeah.
and using those insights to create a marriage that truly reflects their values and their needs.
I think that's a really positive trend.
It's about choosing marriage for the right reasons,
Not because it's expected or because it's just what you do.
but because it holds a deeper meaning for them as a couple.
Exactly.
You know, it's interesting how cohabitation has gone from being seen as this radical alternative to marriage
Sure.
to actually enhancing and enriching the experience of marriage for some couples.
It's definitely a shift in perspective.
It shows how relationships are constantly evolving.
And how we're always redefining what it means to be committed to someone.
So while cohabitation might not be the right choice for everyone, it's clear that it's having a big impact on how we approach relationships and marriage in general.
It's definitely something to think about.
But let's shift gears a bit now and talk about the individual. What about the impact of cohabitation on personal growth? So we've talked about how living together can impact our expectations for future relationships and even how we view marriage. But there's another layer to this whole cohabitation thing, and that's the impact it has on us as individuals, like on our own personal growth. One thing that really stuck with me from that Modern Love episode was this idea that cohabitation can be this incredible journey of self-discovery.
It's so true.
Like, it's not just about learning to share a bathroom with someone.
Right.
It's about learning to share your life with someone, your dreams, your fears, your vulnerabilities.
It's about letting someone see the real you.
And that can be pretty scary.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
can be exciting too, though, right?
Yeah, for sure. It pushes you outside of your comfort zone. It forces you to confront parts of yourself that you might have been avoiding.
It's like you're seeing yourself through someone else's eyes for the first time. And that can be a real eye-opener.
It can be a wake-up call for some people. You might realize that you're more independent than you thought, or maybe that you need more intimacy than you realized.
Yeah,
It can really shake things up.
but I guess those realizations can ultimately be really empowering too.
Oh, they are. Because they give you a deeper understanding of what you need to be happy, what you need in a relationship, what you need in life.
It's like cohabitation is this training ground for self-awareness.
In a way, it is.
And it also teaches you how to set boundaries and communicate your needs.
Right. Because you're constantly having to negotiate with your partner. You have to figure out how to balance your needs with theirs.
And those are skills that can benefit you in all areas of life.
Oh, absolutely. Not just romantic relationships.
Like at work with friends, with family.
Ex-
You learn how to speak up for yourself, how to compromise, how to prioritize your well-being.
And those are valuable life skills.
You know, the Modern Love episode also talked about how living with someone, it can help you identify those patterns you have in relationships.
Oh, yeah. Those tendencies that might be holding you back from finding true happiness.
Like maybe you always choose partners who are emotionally unavailable. Or maybe you tend to avoid conflict at all costs.
We all have these patterns, and sometimes we don't even realize we have them until we're in a situation where they're really being tested.
And cohabitation can be that testing ground
For sure.
because you're seeing your relationship dynamics play out in a really intense way.
Right.
You can't just sweep things under the rug anymore.
Right.
But even though that can be uncomfortable,
It can be really painful sometimes.
it's ultimately an opportunity for growth.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, because once you become aware of those patterns, you can start to make different choices.
That you can break those cycles.
Okay.
So cohabitation isn't just about finding the right partner. It's also about becoming the right partner.
That's a good way to put it.
It's about doing that inner work,
Understanding your own baggage.
learning to communicate in a healthy way.
It's about becoming the best version of yourself.
And that's what makes cohabitation so powerful.
It's a catalyst for personal transformation.
It challenges us to be more self-aware, more communicative, more resilient,
And those are qualities that will benefit us in all our relationships.
whether we stay with that partner or move on to someone new.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into cohabitation and future expectations, I think the biggest takeaway is that living together before marriage, it's not just about testing the waters of a relationship. It's about understanding ourselves in a deeper way. It's about learning and growing and becoming the best partners we can be.
It's about embracing the journey.
And I think that's a beautiful thing. Thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.
And keep exploring those complex and fascinating dynamics of love and relationships.